Good day, boys and girls. In today's math lesson, we will learn how to add and subtract decimals using base 10 blocks as well as a place value chart. In grade 4, you would have learned how to add and subtract decimals up until the hundredths place value. Today, we're going to extend that knowledge and add and subtract decimals up to the thousandths place value. First of all, let's go over our place values represented by our base 10 blocks. So, as we already know from last year, our cube represents our whole number or our amount of ones in our number. So the first place before our decimal point. The next place value is our tenths, which is represented by our flat. So it is a tenth because 10 of these flats can stack upon one another to create this cube. So one of these is 1 out of a possible 10 relative to our whole number. Our second digit after the decimal point represents our hundredths value, represented by our rod of our base 10 blocks. So this one is representing 1 out of 100 because there are 100 rods in this whole cube. So we always look relative to our whole number, or our cube. Then we have our new concept for today, which is the thousandths place value, represented by our small little square or cube of our base 10 blocks. So this one is 1 out of 1,000 because there are 1,000 of these small cubes in this big cube here. So one little cube of those is 1 out of 1,000. So this is our place value chart, which we will be using to represent our numbers as we add and subtract along with our base 10 blocks. So first, the first column represents the number we are representing. Then we have the ones of the whole numbers, which are the cubes. Then we have our tenths, which are the flats. Then we have the hundredths, which are our rods. And then our thousandths, which are our little units or cubes. So now let's try an example of addition. So our example is 1 whole and 325 thousandths. We say it that way because we speak in terms of our last place value. So the 5 is in the thousandths position. So we have 1 whole 325 thousandths plus 1 and 243 thousandths. So I've already demonstrated or represented these numbers above with the base 10 blocks. So we have 1 whole, 3 flats, 2 rods, and 5 of our little cubes here to represent 1 whole and 325 thousandths. Then we have 1 whole, 2 tenths, 4 hundredths, and 3 thousandths to represent 1 whole and 243 thousandths. So now we're going to enter these numbers into our place value chart. So the first thing we do is we write our numbers, which we are adding. So we have 1 and 325 thousandths, and also 1 and 243 thousandths. So now we're just simply going to draw the same thing that we represented by our base 10 blocks. So our 1 or 1 whole looks like this. We just draw our cube. Our tenths, we have 3 of them, and they are the flats. And we want to be sure that we draw our base 10 blocks in our place value chart relative in size, so that, for example, our tenths aren't way bigger than our ones. We want them to be proportionate to how they actually exist in our base 10 blocks. And then we have 2 hundredths, which are our rods. And lastly, we have 5 thousandths. Our next number, 1, that's 1 whole or 1 cube, and 2 tenths, 4 hundredths, and 3 thousandths. So now we simply add up our numbers. So we're going to start off with our thousandths and then work our way up to our ones. So first of all, how many thousandths do we have? We have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. So we simply put our 8 at the bottom there. Now we move to our hundredths. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Our tenths, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And lastly, our ones, 1, 2. And where do we put our decimal point? Well, we learned in our last lesson the importance of lining up our place values. So as we have done in the chart here, we have thousandths, hundredths, tenths, and ones. So we have, for both of our numbers, we have those place values lined up, don't we? So where is our decimal located in our initial numbers? It's after our whole number. So that's why we place it after our 2, after our whole number. And our answer then is 2 and, for the decimal point, we say and. So 2 and 568 thousandths. Now let's try an addition example where we have to use our regrouping strategy. So the numbers we have in this example are 2 and 573 thousandths plus 1 and 652 thousandths. First of all, we represent these numbers using our base 10 blocks. So for our first number, we have 2 wholes, 5 tenths, 7 hundredths, and 3 thousandths. And our second number, we have 1 whole, 6 tenths, 5 hundredths, and 2 thousandths. Now we must enter these numbers into our place value chart, as we did in our first example. So for our first number, we have, again, 2 ones, 2 cubes, 5 tenths, 7 hundredths, and 3 thousandths. Our second number is 1 whole, or 1, 6 tenths, 5 hundredths, and 2 thousandths. So now, as we did in our first example, we simply add our place value numbers. So starting with our thousandths, we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So we place our 5 on the bottom of our thousandths. Next, for our hundredths, we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. So when we have 10 or more of a specific place value, we have to group 10 of those, so 10 rods in this situation, and move those 10 rods to the tenths position, making them into a flat. And once we do so, we cross out those 10 hundredths to indicate that they have transformed into a tenth. And how many hundredths do we have left now? We have 2. So we place 2 at the bottom of our hundredths position. Moving along to our tenths, we count those as well. So we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. So now we group 10 of those tenths and create them into a 1. Again, we cross those out, indicating that they have moved over to the ones position. Now, how many tenths do we have remaining? We have 2. So we place 2 in under our tenths position. And lastly, we count our number of ones. 1, 2, 3, 4. We place our decimal after our whole number or ones position. This is because in our 2 initial numbers, the decimal place is placed after the whole number. And it also makes sense if we were to look at it in an estimation way, because 2 plus 1 and parts of another 2 numbers would make sense to equal around 4.
Thank you for your attention, everyone. We will practice the skills that we learned from this lesson in tomorrow's math class. In our next math lesson, we will use the skills we learned in this lesson to subtract decimal numbers up to the thousandths.